swine. Well, come on, Mama, it's time to eat. Come on, eat. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Red Tool House. This evening, on a cooler summer evening than what we're used to, what's normal, we're going to take advantage of this situation, and in preparation of our piglets getting out of lockup next week, we're going to investigate the condition of our fence in our easternmost pasture that's been shut down for most of the summer. And that's one issue with having electric fence in the woods. Between the whitetail deer and all the limbs, we're going to see how many places it's down. So come with me. So these portly little things have one more week in lockup. They are in weaning mode right now, so they're getting weaned off the sows. And so they're locked up here in the barn, and then they have the little corral, the weaning corral behind it, a place where they can hang out, at least get some dirt, get in a wallow, that type of stuff. But about this time next week, actually that's not true, about 9 days from now, I'm going to let them out on their own pasture, separating them completely from the sows. And if we get really froggy, we're actually going to move the sows to a new pasture as well. But so our sows are here, and then this fence line right here goes up to the back of this wooded pasture. So it's everything on this side is where we're going to move the piglets when it's time to let them out. Now, I know I have some specific issues because I see grass growing up in the electric fence down here in the meadow, so I've got to get that taken care of. But the first thing I want to do is go down and get a reading on my far corner with the electric fence on, get a voltage reading and just see how bad it is, and then that gives me kind of a baseline, and then I can see what we can improve to. All right, let's get a reading. Our Father, who art in heaven. Nope, that's the wrong kind. All right, so this post is our easternmost corner. The house is up yonder, barn, everybody's that way, to the west. This is our front corner here. And obviously you can see, well, you can't see, but the line goes that way and all that tall grass. So that's the first issue. But what's interesting is I discovered another issue when I was cleverly putting my camera in this top of this pole, so it'd be a neat shot. The pole itself is electrified, so we've got an issue here where our fence is actually grounding out on the pole, but still has enough potency to make me feel it. So that was a nice surprise. But let's put the reading on and see what we get. Clearly we have a dead battery, so let's go see if we can resolve that issue. Okay, so after spending 20 minutes to find another 9-volt battery, we're ready to test again. So getting 2.47 kilovolts, which is below my threshold. I like to have at least 3. 3, in my experience, will keep a pig in. Anything under that, then you have a chance to have pig on the run. So we're going to start working. I'm going to go up in the woods first. We'll do the weed eating and all the grass clearing last, because when I do that, I get covered in grass clippings. So let's at least get the stuff done in the woods, and that way I'm not walking around covered in grass all the time. But first, we're going to go turn it off, so when I go up in the woods and bend down to grab something, I don't get the crap knocked out of me. That's the one part I always seem to forget. All right, so I got the fence turned off, so that allows me to come back to the same pole here and address this issue of why this pole is hot, or was hot when it was plugged in. And it's my turnbuckle, my jumper here, is actually touching. And obviously I didn't wire that up that way, so what would have caused that? Well, of course, whitetail. Whitetail deer are the scourge of Red Tool House. And those things just love to get up to full speed coming through this meadow when I spook them. And most of them jump this fence because it's only 3 feet off the ground. Not even that, it's 2 feet off the ground. But then there's always the dummy that just skims right through it. So they've blasted this so many times. You can see it's actually laying on the ground. That's the top rail. So we're going to have to obviously get that cleaned up. But this will be an easy fix here. So going into the woods here, straight at that post that was hot, we have our near vertical climb. I know the camera doesn't do a good job showing elevation, but that's a bit of a climb. So I'm gonna shimmy up there real quick to the flat, where the bench actually starts to flatten off, see if there's any major obstruction. Hopefully it's just a limb, something like that I can move. And then I'm going to come back down and drive up to that next bench, and that way I can work my way down and stay on that flat, having all of my equipment with me. So here, watch a fat guy run up the side of a mountain. All right, no obstructions, we're good. Moving on. All right, so here's our line. You can kind of see pigs are here, pigs are not here. So even though it's been months, of course, you know, being here in the forest, it doesn't bush back up as much as it had been if it had been left alone. But that's the hill I ran up. So I came up to that boundary tree, that big white oak down there. So I'm just going to inspect that up because we're about halfway up the mountain. So we're going to turn and go up that way. So I'll walk about halfway up, check that out, get in a side-by-side and drive up to the top. So that's the beauty of having these benches. I can ride out to different points on the fence line here and be able to inspect it, at least have my tools with me close. But it would be nice to obviously have a road that follows the line exactly. But we can't do that here. Okay, so everything is clear there except for this piece of barbed wire was lying against the fence. And what had happened, yeah, this farm is covered in barbed wire because it's been, who knows what it's been over the last 100 years. But usually the pigs, they root and they make these little berms along the edge of the electric fence where they root and stop. And they must have rooted up this piece of barbed wire and of course laid it right across the line. So that has a nasty short as well. So corrected that. So this is the highest point of the eastern pasture. You can see the side by side back there. That white oak is the top corner. So the line comes up this way, hits this white oak, and then turns. And if you see here, we had a cherry tree bite it. And I cannot believe it. Normally anything that uproots on this farm falls across the line or a road. That one actually fell uphill and is not across my fence. So, woohoo! Little triumph there. Don't have to cut that turkey up. And I think we need, Running this whole line up the side of the mountain that makes up our border here, our property border, I've noticed that we need to do some tensioning, so I'll have to go back to that front corner and give it a tighten. The only reason why I didn't do that at the beginning is because there could have been something that broke off an insulator where I have to have it pulled down real tight, and it broke it off and it'd make it loose, and if I go to tighten it up, then I come up and discover a broken insulator, and I can't do the tightening without having to go back and redo stuff, having to make it loose again. So doing tightening last makes sure that I don't have anything broken, anything out of place, and keeps me from screwing myself over there as far as getting stuff tightened down. Now this is a section headed back down the mountain where my road runs along my fence, or actually my fence runs along my road. And that makes it very convenient because now I can just drive down and eyeball it as I go. And that's the way I'd love to do all my pastures. You flatlanders, I'm envious of you, the fact that you can do that, that you can drive all the way around or walk leisurely around your pig pasture borders without having to change elevation by 300 feet. So what's interesting with limbs that fall, you know, they don't have to necessarily fall across the line. All they got to do is fall close to the line, and the pigs will take care of picking them up and throwing them across the line because they're, you know, they're just curious, so they're going to nose through stuff, and they always end up moving things over so that it gets in the way. So here's beech limb, and I've discovered if you move limbs or logs off your fence, move them downhill because gravity is going to get them right back across your fence if you throw them uphill. So I'm down here behind the farrowing barn. I don't know if you can see the piglets hanging out over there, just enjoying the evening. But over here in the woods, all of this stilt grass is just taken over. And no matter what I seed, the stilt grass just chokes it out. So I'm just giving up. I'm not going to try to beat it out. Just spent a lot of money in seed trying to combat that. It seems like with this shaded area, this stilt grass just thrives and just takes off like crazy, beats out anything that I can do, any shade-loving grasses. So fortunately, the pigs eat it. And it actually is very good for erosion control because it grows fast, it's got a decent root system. So, you know, it's one of those things, if you can't beat them, join them. So we're just gonna run with it. And the pigs do enjoy eating it. So you know, by the time we get to fall, this will probably all cut down from the piglets. All right, so technically now I'm back on the main pasture where the sows currently are. But these two pastures are connected to one another with the electric fence. So, you know, if there's a break or a breach somewhere on this pasture, then of course it's going to affect the eastern pasture. Now I've checked this one more than I checked this one because I obviously have live animals in this. But as it usually goes, I walked all the way out that bench, so all the way around the turn, out almost to where the boat is. You guys know where our boat meadow is. And go figure, the very last insulator on the bench walking out there before I'd turn and come back to get the side-by-side was the one that was broken off, and guess who forgot to put insulators in their pockets? So we're going to drive over there and fix that broken insulator. That insulator, of course, was damaged by a whitetail, most likely. You would think with all this walking that you do, Troy, why aren't you slimmer than you are? Well, of course, the GoPro adds, you know, 50, 60 pounds, they say. So there's that. I'm really actually 165 pounds and ripped like a granite stone, but cameras, you know, what are you going to do? Technically, it's actually because of my love for Kelly's biscuits. I have an addiction issue, and it's called homemade biscuits. All right, enough of that. Let's go get some insulators. 2 insulators. So here we go, broken insulator clean. Of course, the wire is laying against that T-post. That doesn't work. That's one thing I always try to do when I put in posts, step-in posts, T-posts, anything like that. Again, since we're not dealing with flat land where I can just have these straight lines, there's places like right here where this line is under quite a bit of a tension. It wants to go that way because the fence turns and goes that way and turns and goes this way. So there's a lot of tension and a lot of stress on this insulator, and that's why it broke off when something hit it pretty hard. It snaps off here. But I make sure I put my fence on the outside, even though people would say, well, you want it on the inside so the pig doesn't mess with your post. In my experience, the pig won't get that close to the fence once he knows it's there. So it's not like she's going to come up and take out that post, knock it over or anything. But if this insulator breaks, you see the line just simply stays right here. If it was on the inside and it broke, and the stump wasn't here, then there would be all kinds of tension loss. The fence would be laying on the ground everywhere, and the fence would be further down the hill. So to come repair that would require more work. So that's why I like putting my posts on the inside of an angle where tension's trying to go against it. All right, so now we're at the westernmost portion of these two pastures. This is what we call the boat meadow. And you may wonder, Troy, why do you call it the boat meadow? Well, we're not quite sure. There's just some obvious reasons that jump out to us. Anyway, so here on this line that comes down the mountain and comes down to our new cut, and then of course turns and goes down the road, I see we have a key issue here, and it was actually buried, the line was buried in the leaves. So you can see it's just lying here, a stick on it. So obviously that doesn't work. So we're going to, because there's a crown right here, I think I'm going to get one of my extra step-in posts and put that in, and that'll take advantage. The wire is being stretched between 2 points, and there's a crown of land in between it, so it wants to naturally touch there. Found another insulator that was broken off by deer. These are those nice black pin insulators. I really like using those, but they still are no match for the whitetail when they hit them at 20 miles an hour. So I'm going to go fetch the side-by-side on the other side of the meadow here so I can get my hardware. This is a spot that lives in infamy. This is where Noelle farrowed when she busted out of the barn in her last farrowing. You guys got to see the size of the wallow they've made up here in the boat meadow. Now keep in mind that when we first got this place 20 years ago, this was an old well site. In fact, right behind the boat to your right of that locust tree is the old well casing. So this was a gas well or an oil well, I'm not sure which. But so we got it, it had a bunch of trash here. Of course, it had a boat, came with a boat. And I cut the stern out of that boat to make it a shelter. And my pigs used that for years. But now it's broken down to the point that they really can't get in it. But I want you to see this wallow they've created right behind the boat here. The thing is massive. And what's crazy is, here we are in July, and this is the driest time. This in August will be the driest time for us. It'll really allow the ground to dry out, the creeks dry up, those type of things. But this is still holding water. I drove through all kinds of mud to get the side-by-side where it was over there. The amount of water that comes out of this mountain right here is just unbelievable. So one of these days, next time we get an excavator in here, we're going to try to get some ditch lines cut and see if we can channel this water, to get this to dry out, but obviously have some water channeled for our benefit. All right, so this whole back line, so all the way over to the farrowing barn, which is way over there, across the back bench, down the mountain, and right to this post, I've all verified that it's all clear and ready to go, but it just has, you can see it just has a lot of slack in it. So we're going to tighten this up, and we're going to be Ginger with it, and may even be Marianne, to go easy so we don't snap anything off. So why would these things get loose like that? Obviously, I didn't see any major breaks or anything other than the fence laying on the ground, but that was just laying flat. Why would they get loose? Well, over time, everything kind of draws in. I don't do heavy-duty corner posts like you would see in a real farm, simply because A, our topography, B, I may move this next year. You just never know. I may move it next week, for crying out loud. So don't want to put that much key infrastructure in yet until I know exactly where I'm going to keep fence. So these posts kind of bend in a little bit. Since we're doing all these crazy corners, who knows? I think sometimes the trees get up and walk a little bit, the ones that are attached to the fence. So it just seems like everything needs to be tightened up. The wire can stretch, the deer hit it and stretch it, of course. So there's a lot of reasons. So That's why it's handy to have the tool. This is the second tool I've bought because I keep losing these things. Oh look, we've come full circle. We're now back down here at our starting post, and I'm going to tension this fence that was going up the mountain because it needed a little snugging. And then what I'll do is, instead of boring you guys with me running the weed eater, maybe we'll place a clever, well-timed and entertainingly musical montage of time-lapse here. And we'll get through that real quick, and then we'll wrap up with testing to see how much we improved our voltage. All right, let's go.
Okay, here we go.
So man, here I said weed eating was the least exciting part, and it turned out to be the most dramatic part of the entire video. So about right up there, about 50 yards up there, just going along, getting the weeds along the fence, and daggone it if a paper wasp didn't come up my boot leg, up my pants, went all the way up my pants leg and stung me right on the YouTube. It hurt. It still hurts. It really hurts, I just gotta say. So you may be able to see that here in the time lapse where I stop and grimace in pain, if you will. So I had to take a break and do an inventory check there and make sure everything was okay. I ain't had that happen in, I don't know, forever. I'm not sure I've ever run into that. Anywho, we'll wait for the swelling to go down, but as we wait, let's check out our fence line and see how hot we are. I don't know if I'm getting that fast enough to the camera. 5.08, so just over 5 kilovolts on this entire, oh my goodness, this has got to be almost 3-4 acres. And what we got fenced in with my little Patriot Charger. So I will take that all day long. That's good. What's funny is I actually plugged it in back at the barn, walked about 4 steps and heard a piglet squeal. So that lets you know it's working, right? All right, so I think now we're ready to let them loose next week. They should have a nice pasture of fresh grass to get into and new forage that hadn't been messed over in a while. And we'll definitely document that when we loose the hounds. All right, take care, everybody.